Hi, this is Mr. Titanium, i.e. Richard Wagner, your host, Richard Wagner. I'm so happy to be here with you today. We're going to discuss what the perfect camera is for your son and daughter for Christmas. In order to pick out the perfect camera, the first thing you must do is you must absolutely not hide your purchase from your child. Often at times when Christmas time comes around, we always want to do special for our loved ones, and that specialness always comes in the form of wanting to surprise them with something that they'd wanted. But I can assure you that a camera is an extraordinarily personal gift, and the last thing that you really want to do is get something that is going to, not be the right thing for the person you're giving this gift to. So to start right off, I want to mention that I'm not going to talk about any other brand except Nikon. So the first thing you have to determine is whether or not the person you're buying this gift for wants a Nikon camera. Now Nikons I think are excellent. I would choose them over all the other brands, obviously, because I have, and the reason is simple. Sony has the best autofocus. So if autofocus is what you're looking for, then Sony is the way to go. I don't choose Sony because I find that in post-production, that's when you use Lightroom and Photoshop, I find the raw files, they're the equivalent of a digital negative, don't hold up very well. The reason why I don't go with Canon's a great camera and great lenses. The reason why I don't choose camera is because Canon really doesn't support third-party lenses, and I think that the support of third-party lenses is an important consideration when choosing a professional camera setup that you're going to work with throughout the years, and that brings us to the Nikon. So what Nikon do you buy? Well, you have to pick a budget, and if you're going to have a budget and you're going to say that your budget is $2,000, which is a lot of money, no kidding, right? I mean, who among us is wealthy, But a $2,000 present is a very, very substantial investment, and you want to buy the right thing. My advice is simple. You want to buy the Nikon Z5II. And it has to be the Mark II. And the reason why it has to be the Mark II is that the Z5II comes in at around $1,600, maybe a little bit more. And what makes it such a great camera is that the chip that's inside of it is the Expedia 7 chip. And that particular chip is the same brains that powers their flagship cameras. So essentially for $1,500, you're getting the same brains as a $6,000 camera. So that's the reason why, meaning that the autofocus is the same, the color science, all the things that make that brand special are contained within that camera. The big difference comes in the difference in sensor. And when you talk about sensor, you have two aspects to a sensor. One is the image quality, which amongst the entire Nikon lineup is exceptional. The professional lineup, the Z series full frame. There are two types of cameras you can buy. You can buy a there are more than two types, but commercially available, what you'll be considering, full frame or what's known as 3/4 or micro 4/3. Don't buy any of those. Those push them to the side. I don't like them. I like the full frame sensor. That's a sensor that's roughly the same size as the size that you would have taken if you were using a 35mm camera. So it's approximate. The sensor is approximately that size, and that's a good size sensor. Now, in terms of sensor sizes, you can have megapixels. The more megapixels, the higher the definition, the more information you retain. So one would naturally think that a higher megapixel camera is better, and that is completely false. Yes, they cost more, and they could be right for you depending upon the type of photography and the purpose for which you're using the camera. Remember, all cameras essentially are tools. So with a 45 megapixel sensor, what does that give you that, say, a smaller sensor doesn't give you? It only gives you one thing: the ability to make ginormous printouts. If you're not making, huge, ginormous printouts, the utility for a large sensor camera definitely diminishes. The other time that you need a lot of megapixels is if you're doing things like birding. And what happens is that you're trying to take a picture of an animal or a bird or wildlife, and you don't have enough reach. Your lens isn't long enough. You really needed a slightly longer lens with a little bit more powerful magnification. In that case, you can take the shot, and then what you can do in post is crop. So you get rid of some of the image. And if you have a higher megapixel camera, you're able to crop more effectively. So that's the benefit behind having a higher megapixel camera. But for the most part, what you really need is something that's kind of better, which is a 24 megapixel camera, and the reason for that is the file size. Once you're getting into these cameras, the files are tremendous, and what happens is it eats up storage. And the one thing that you're going to wind up doing with a higher megapixel camera is requiring that the individual you're buying this for has a computer that's able to handle these images. And when I mean handle these images, I mean handling it in two ways. One, that the CPU is powerful enough to be able to do modern photographic editing on the file themselves, because that's how large that they are. And two, the size of your hard drive or your SSD. These take up tremendous amounts of storage, so you're probably going to wind up spending money on expensive external storage units, because external storage units come in two varieties. One are the spinning disk platters, one are the SSDs. The SSDs are expensive, especially when you get large ones, and you need large ones because your files are large. If you'd had smaller files, you would have needed a smaller SSD, thereby saving you money. So whenever you go to a higher megapixel camera, everything becomes exponentially more expensive because of the incidental costs that you don't consider. So for that reason, I do not recommend that you buy the Z9 or the Z8, which is fortunate because you're talking about cameras that are $5,500, $4,000 thereabouts, and that's a lot of money to spend on a camera. Instead, what I'm suggesting is you buy the Nikon Z5II for $1,650, and there you go. But once you buy the camera, that's only part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the lens, and the lens is probably more important than anything else, and that's actually the reason why you're buying into the Nikon mirrorless lineup, is that all the lenses that your son or daughter or the person who you're buying this for are going to utilize are going to stay with them for quite some time, because Nikon made a switch from one mount, which is called the F mount, and they changed when they went to mirrorless cameras to the Z mount. Now they have adapters that allow you to adapt the old mount lenses to the new mount cameras. It doesn't go in the reverse direction though. The old mount, the F mount, have been around for literally 66 years. So that's why when I'm telling you that they have this new mount to buy a new camera and it's going to last them a very long time, 66 more years of lens manufacturing will be in good shape. You should only hope that this Nikon Z5II, is around in 66 years. Putting that aside, when dealing with the Nikon Z6II, what I wanted to tell you is we're talking about lenses, and the lens that I would recommend that you purchase, I think I have it here, is the lens that's on this camera. This lens is a 40 millimeter lens. It's an f.2. It costs $200. So now you're spending $1,650 plus $200. You're still under $2,000, which is $1,850. The reason why I'm suggesting this lens is it's an excellent lens, meaning the image quality is fantastic. What it's not is weather sealed. This is not the type of thing you want to take out in the rain or anything of that sort. If you're concerned about your 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 child, the person that you're buying this camera for, wanting to take this out in the rain, then I recommend a slightly different lens. It's a bit more expensive. It's the 50 1.5S. This is a very good lens. This lens is probably going for about $450. So when you add it all together, you're a bit above $2,000, which is why I'm not recommending this right off the bat. The 50 and the 40 are the best, I think are a good way to start for an entry-level lens. However, the one thing you don't want to do is that they always try to sell you these things that are called kit lenses. What kit lenses are that they're zoom lenses. And the zoom lenses will go from 28 millimeters to 200 millimeters. They have a 28 to 400. And you say, wow, this is a great lens because it's so versatile. It covers all the different, all the different lengths, so that you can go from from a wide angle all the way to something really long. Why wouldn't I want to buy this? Well, there's one reason why. It's because these lenses tend not to let in a lot of light. And what I mean to say is that they have an aperture of about an f.4 or an f.5, and they go up from there. And what I mean by aperture is I mean the size of the opening that light can pass through within a camera. So for example, a camera that has a smaller f-stop has a much wider aperture. So for example, an f of 2 is much more desirable than an f of 4.5. And just so that you understand what it is that I'm talking about, the reason why the number gets smaller and the aperture gets larger is the way that we calculate that number. The way that number is calculated is, for example, if we have a 50 millimeter lens, it means that the area, the distance from the focal point to the sensor is 50 millimeters. That's what goes on top. What goes right below that is the diameter. So if the diameter is 25 millimeters, it's 50 millimeters divided by 25 millimeters, the diameter, which gives you an f of 2. And the reason why we do it that way is that equation allows us to be uniform against all focal ranges. So the same f.2 on the 85 is what an f.2 on a 50 is what an f.2 on a 28 means. And that's why we use those numbers. So the lower the f, the larger the aperture. And so what I'm suggesting is that you get your student, son or daughter or whoever you're getting this gift for, I would suggest that you get them a prime, because primes always are the sharpest, and it's a good way to start. In terms of zooms, you can buy zooms that have reasonably low f-stops. Nikon has a zoom, for example, it's a 24 to 70, and it's an f2.8, and they have two versions of it, the original and the one that just came out. The original goes for $2,000. The one that just came out goes for $3,000. There's really no difference between the two in terms of image quality. The biggest difference between the two is one telescopes and the other one doesn't. And to help you understand what it means to telescope, I don't even think I have a lens out here that telescopes. But anyways, stay away from those. They're very, very expensive. And it's something that you can get later on for other gifts and so forth. So if you want to splurge, go ahead, buy the 50. If you don't want to splurge, go ahead and buy the 40 millimeter. Your other choice, now I will tell you that I don't own a Nikon Z5II. However, I was going to buy one, but just at the moment I was going to buy one, they were recently released, and they were going for a premium, $1,700, $60, $70, maybe $1,800. They were they were more expensive than they were right now. Coincidentally, right at that moment, they had a sale running on the Nikon Z6III. And the Nikon Z6III, which was a $2,300 camera, was selling for $1,850. And so I got it because there was only like a $50 difference between the Nikon Z2 and the Nikon Z6III. The Nikon Z6III is also a nice camera. It's just a bit more expensive. The advantages are it has a higher frames per second. It can shoot a little bit faster. But that's not really something that I think is important when it comes to shooting stills. And I think that the video on both these is relatively good for a hybrid camera, and especially at the price point that you're getting it at. So my advice to you is that whatever you do, speak to your son or daughter. Make sure you let them know what your budgetary constraints are. If for some reason your budgetary constraints are $3,000, maybe you should tell them your budgetary constraints are $2,000. Save a little bit of money off to the side, so if they find something that they really want, you can then surprise them with it later on, that type of thing. But whatever you do, try and make this an experience where the reason why I discussed all these different things with you was because I want you to be able to take this information and discuss it with your son and daughter, thereby sharing in their love and participating in their lives. And by doing that, by showing an interest in the things that they care about, it's like you're showing interest in them. And therefore, it makes it an extra special Christmas present. And so the reason why I gave you all this information wasn't that I think you're going to go out and shoot pictures and stuff like that, but I just wanted to give you a basis for being able to discuss this gift with the person that you care so much about. I hope this video was useful to you. Have a great day, and I'll speak with you soon. Bye-bye.